Bible with you, turn it on or open it, whichever is appropriate, to Genesis chapter 30. And we'll start to read at verse 1. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I die." Jacob became very angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" Drop down to verse 22. And God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph and said, "May the Lord add to me another son." After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so that I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you." Now, if you move from there into 1 Samuel and the first verse in the first chapter. Okay. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. One was called Hannah and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his hometown to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah's sacrifice, he would give portions of his meat to his wife Peninnah, to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't you know that I mean more to you than 10 sons?" Once when they had finished eating and drinking, Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. She made a vow, saying, "Lord Almighty, if only you will look on your servant's misery and remember me, and do not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine." "Not so, my lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of great anguish and grief." Eli said to her, "Go in peace. May the Lord of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." She said, "May your servant find favor in your eyes." Then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramkah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, because I asked the Lord for him. It's amazing what you can look at and not see until you see it. I was with Brian after we had lunch together, and after lunch we were trying to walk off the effects of all that we'd eaten. And we walked past Romsey Abbey. Now, I've walked past Romsey Abbey for the last 50 years and never noticed that there's something, I think there's something missing that you would normally expect to see in an abbey church or a cathedral, and there is no great west door. Now, a great west door in a cathedral normally gives access to the aisle, and you process down the aisle to the altar and the choir. You remember that whenever Westminster Abbey is opened for a royal occasion, the Great West Door is opened and they process down the aisle in state. When I was there, I had to go through a side door. No Great West Door opened for me. I'd never seen it. And we went inside and spoke to a very nice lady guide there and said, "Where's the West Door?" She said, "Well, they never needed one because when it was built, there were no houses that side of the abbey. The ground was exceedingly boggy. There were a couple of fish ponds for the nuns for their fish on Fridays. The nuns would enter from the, get my geography right, from the from the south side of the abbey, and the folks from the town who wanted to come worship had a separate church on the side of the abbey, and they came in from the north. So there's no need for a west door, and so none was built. But I'd never seen that until I saw it. I hadn't noticed before this morning that in our congregation, this morning we had 30 people, and there was only one person under the age of 20. Now, I was watching Match of the Day last night, and if you'd let me expand that, if there had been 100 here, or 90, 3 times as many, we'd have had 3 children. I was looking at Match of the Day last night, and if you'd cast your net over a group of 100 people, I'm guaranteed that there would have been a larger proportion of people under 20 than that. And this is my burden, so I don't impose anything on you, but I think it ought to be our burden. Give me children or we die. That's what Rachel cried. Because Hannah was in great distress because she couldn't bear children. It was the reason she was there. It was the reason both of the ladies were there. They saw it as the reason for their being that was all wrapped up in having children. And as they cried out to God and God met them, in both cases it was so significant how God answered them, because in Jacob's case, we know the story well. Jacob and Esau fell out. You remember Jacob stole Esau's birthright and had to run for his life. He went to work for his uncle Laban, who fobbed him off with Leah instead of Rachel, who he loved, and he had to work for him for 14 years in order to marry the girl he was in love with. And then she couldn't bear children. But as she cried out to the Lord listened and enabled her to conceive a wonderful scripture. God remembered her, and she brought forth her firstborn, and he was Joseph. And what followed after that birth was so significant. Jacob says to Laban, "It's time for me to go. Let me go on my way with my wives and my children. Let me separate myself from you." And which he was unable to do. And as part of that separation, you know the story, he met with his brother Esau, and there was reconciliation. And this firstborn Joseph was going to be such a significant character in the whole of history because of what happened to him in Egypt, the way he looked after Egypt and kept it fed for the years of famine, and how he met with his brothers, and there was reconciliation, and the whole history of the children of Israel took a different turning from that point on. They came to settle in Egypt, which was great at first because they were kept secure from the famine that was going on in the world, but it turned out not to be so great. They needed rescuing, and you know the story of that. And in the case of Hannah and Samuel, it also says that God remembered her. He heard her cry, came to her aid, and she brought into birth Samuel, who was a phenomenally significant figure on the history of Israel. He ushered in the transition from judge-led society to a kingdom with a king, Saul, and then David followed, and the whole of history changed because of these two women's prayers and the way God answered them. Who knows what will happen if we start to pray for children? Who knows the significance of some of those people that will come as we cry out to God, give us children or we die? Because I look round and we're not getting any younger folks, and we need youngsters. I love the fact that I live near a school, because you hear the chatter of the kids with their mums going to school in the morning as they come past me. And if I step out of the door of our block of flats at break times, although I'm a quarter of a mile away from school, you hear the noise of the children, and it's the sound of life. It's the sound of exuberance. It's the sound of excitement. They're having a great time running around the playground. and we need that here. You know, we need the noise of children running around and having a great time in the house of the Lord. Amen? So this is the burden of my heart for us tonight. I had something else planned yesterday. If you'd asked me, I'd say, I'm going to talk about this. But this is, I just felt that this is so important that we, we see it every week that we have few children, and yet perhaps we don't see it in the way that we should. That's my heart. I remember, and with this I'll stop. I remember reading a book about D.L. Moody, the famous American evangelist of the 1800s. His teacher, every morning as the teacher came into the room, the children would stand up in acknowledgement of his role and his responsibility and what he was going to impart to the children. They would salute him in that sense. But he, at the same time, would raise his hat to his pupils, because he said, I don't know the potential of the people I'm facing, these kids. And he didn't know that in his class was a child who would turn thousands of people to the kingdom of God. And who knows that these children that we're crying out for tonight, when they come, what significant work they will do for the kingdom of God. But it starts with us, folks. You know, we need children, young people. Amen? So I know I haven't taken up much of our time, but let's get to prayer. Okay. Father, you know our hearts, and we thank you that your heart is for us, not against us. We thank you that you have a plan and purpose for our lives and for the life of this fellowship. I pray that, Lord, you will lead us in the paths that will bring us, Lord, fruit for our labours, as we heard last week, Lord, that we will bear fruit, and fruit that would remain, and it would be in lives that are changed by the power of the gospel and turned into men and women of God who can serve you irrespective of their age or their background, but the fact that they've met with you. I pray that, Lord, this time next year we will look at this congregation and it will be different, because there will be children and young people and young married couples with their families. Oh God, I pray that you will bring this to pass, not for our glory, but for your glory, that the kingdom of God might be established and seen in our midst. Lord, we ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.